of the world. Cheers.
A toast to friendship at a UN summit dinner for world leaders, US President Donald Trump and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. But Trump has not always treated Merkel like a friend. The rough transcript of a phone call to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky cited Trump saying, "When I was speaking to Angela Merkel, she talks Ukraine, but she doesn't do anything." Zelensky was quick to agree, saying, "You are absolutely right, not only 100%, but actually 1,000%. Trump then told his counterpart that the U.S. had been, quote, very, very good to Ukraine. That's all according to the official rough transcript of their conversation as released by the White House this week, with the caveat that it is not a word-for-word transcript. But the German government has pushed back against Trump's accusations on Ukraine, citing hard facts.
According to OECD statistics, we are the third biggest financial partner for development after the USA and the EU. And of course, our EU contributions support investments and aid for Ukraine.
Germany has also been deeply engaged in diplomacy to help Ukraine as it struggles with a separatist uprising in the east. Germany was part of the so-called Normandy format that sought to bring an end to the conflict. But Trump appeared to ignore this, adding yet more strain to the German-American relationship.
Well, for more on the fallout from the whistleblower report, I'm joined tonight by Jonathan Katz of the German Marshall Fund. Jonathan spent many years developing U.S. policy in Europe, including Ukraine, with the U.S. State Department, as well as on Capitol Hill. Jonathan, it's good to have you on the show. Trump, like other U.S. presidents, says that his conversations with other foreign leaders should remain confidential. If not, embarrassing things are said and revealed. What alarms you more about what we've heard tonight, that this conversation was outed or that both of the presidents were caught trashing Angela Merkel?
Well, I think there's two things here. One, obviously, this was a whistleblower that witnessed and was part of witnessing the president trying to use his office and to go after a political opponent. And so there's nothing disturbing about a whistleblower exposing Mr. Trump in this manner. And it's quite clear that Congress, and particularly the House of Representatives, think so, and that's why there's an impeachment inquiry looking at this issue. But the other half is quite revealing, of course, is the conduct towards America's most important allies, like Germany. The president has repeatedly, both publicly in the past, and now we know in these private conversations, has used these opportunities to trash allies, to weaken relationships. But he also, I think, underlying all this, uses these moments in order to achieve his own objectives, rather than that of allies or even of the United States in this case. And I think this was what makes it particularly dangerous in this case, is that the president was trying to use his office to achieve political ambitions and power.
Well, Jonathan, what do you think the significance of this is for U.S.-German relations? I mean, do you think German Chancellor Angela Merkel, do you think that she was surprised to read this?
Well, I'm certain that she is not shocked given the past behavior of the president, including in direct conversations previously. So this was undoubtedly not shocking. Some of the things that were more shocking in it was the response back from President Zelensky agreeing, in effect, that Germany, France, in effect, and I look at all European partners, are not pulling their weight in support of Ukraine, and that's just not true. And of course, one of the best parts of that Ukraine has experienced over the last several years as it moves forward in terms of democracy, security, economic growth has been this transatlantic support that has included the United States on one hand, Germany, the European Union. And so when you look at the bill of who's provided assistance, you see that on both sides of the Atlantic, support for Ukraine has been strong. And what I think has happened in this conversation, particularly for Mr. Zelensky, it's actually weakened his relationship with European partners. including Mr. Macron and Chancellor Merkel, both who we mentioned in this conversation.
Yeah.
And it's quite unfortunate because I think if you look at the scale of support and including recent engagement on the Normandy 4 format to resolve the conflict in eastern Ukraine, it has been Chancellor Merkel and Mr. Macron have been right there with Mr. Zelensky trying to resolve this issue. And so I think right today they have to be doubting whether or not Mr. Zelensky is somebody they can trust.
This whistleblower report, Jonathan, reveals to the entire world much about how the U.S. president regards the rest of the world and how he regards the rule of law and due process. This is what the president said last night about the people who gave the whistleblower that information. It was recorded on a smartphone at a private dinner with Trump and about 50 guests. Take a listen.
I want to know who's the person that gave the whistleblower? Who's the person that gave the whistleblower the information? Because that's close to a spy. You know what we used to do in the old days when we were smart, right? With spies and treason, right? We used to handle it a little differently than we do now.
We used to handle them a little differently back then. What did you hear in that address, Jonathan?
Well, first of all, it's reprehensible that the president would make such a statement. It's incredibly important that the U.S. government, in particular, have people making certain that officials who are not above the law are held accountable for using power in a way that they should not. So it's reprehensible. Second, I would say the president has used this tactic. Just let's recall, this whole incident really is connected directly to the reelection or the reelection efforts of President Trump. He is using this, and I think he wants to use this incident to rile up his base. In the past, he has used, or at least thrown out the idea that his own supporters should use force. And in this particular instance, it's quite disconcerting that I think what he's trying to do is to send a signal to anybody within his administration that might be thinking of doing something similar, not to do it.
So it could, you could read this as intimidation. If Trump appears to advocate some would say the death penalty or extrajudicial punishment for traitors, I mean, what does that say to Germany and Europe about our shared values with the United States?
Well, I think this president has long ago abandoned the idea of shared values with his partners in Berlin, Paris, Brussels, and across Europe. The president has not been an exporter of U.S. values as being about democracy. And what we're seeing today is more about corruption and something that I think is unusual coming from the White House. He's really the first president that has really not advanced the issue of democracy and human rights in any way. And so there is this disconnect, and you're seeing a disconnect that has led some European leaders to think heavily about strengthening European security without the United States. And so this is it's not just about the values issue itself, it's about the overall relationship. And the core of that relationship revolves around democracy, human rights, which I believe Americans still believe strongly in a bipartisan way in the U.S. Congress. And many people in this administration believe in this type of engagement and also how important it is to transatlantic unity.
Jonathan Katz of the German Marshall Fund joining us tonight from Washington. Jonathan, we appreciate your time and your insights tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.